Good morning students. Today we will be discussing about the chapter Nuclei, which carries around 5 to 6 marks in the CET paper, and the topics included in this chapter are atomic mass, constituents and representation of nucleus, mass energy relation, mass defect, radius of nuclei, radioactivity and types of decay, law of radioactive decay, half-life and mean life, nuclear fission and fusion, nuclear reactor, uses of radioisotopes and classification of elementary particles. So the first topic is atomic mass. So what is this atomic mass? Usually we express the mass in kilograms, but it is not convenient to use this unit for measuring the mass of atom, which is very small. So for this we use a unit called atomic mass unit, which is abbreviated as AMU. So one atomic mass unit is defined as 1/12 of the mass of carbon 12 atom. So mass of one carbon 12 atom is 1.9926 into 10 power minus 26 kg divided by 12. So one atomic mass unit is around 1.6605 into 10 raised to minus 27 kg. So this is a very important result to be remembered. The atomic masses of different elements depends on the number of isotopes of that element present. So what are isotopes? Isotopes are the atoms having same number of protons but different number of neutrons. Now for example, if I consider chlorine. Chlorine has two isotopes, namely Cl35 and Cl37. Okay. So now let us consider calculate the atomic mass of chlorine. To calculate the atomic mass of chlorine, we must know the natural abundance of these isotopes present in the nature. So for chlorine 35, it is found to be 75% abundance in nature, and this is found to be around 25% abundance in nature. Therefore, the average mass of the chlorine atom as a whole is found to be, so abundance into its atomic mass divided by 100 plus 25 into 37 divided by 100, which gives you around 35.5 atomic mass units. So 35.5 U, this is the atomic mass of chlorine. Next topic is the constituents of nucleus. Constituents of nucleus. So we all know the constituent of nucleus is proton and the neutron. So proton and the neutron together, they are called as nucleons. They are held together inside the nucleus with a strong nuclear force. So what are these protons? First, protons are positively charged particles, and the mass of proton is found to be around 1.00727 in atomic mass unit, and in terms of kgs it is 1.672 into 10 power minus 27 kg. So you have to remember both the units in atomic mass unit as well as in kg, because it is helpful in problems. So yeah, Rutherford discovered proton. Next we are going to study about this neutron. Next particle is neutron. Neutron was discovered by James Chadwick, and neutron is neutral in nature. It has no net charge. So mass of the neutron is found to be around 1.0086 AMU, and in kgs it is found to be around 1.6749 into 10 raised to minus 27 kg. Next, all the electrons of an atom are found outside the nucleus. So who discovered electrons? It is J.J. Thomson who discovered electrons. And the mass of the electrons is found to be 0.0005449 AMU, and in terms of kg it is 9.1 into 10 power minus 31 kg. So these are the important numericals which you have to remember. So the charge of the electron is negative, as you all know it. Next, how do we represent the nucleus? representation of the nucleus. Next topic is representation. So now I have any element. Say for example I have a element known as helium. How do I represent it? So we know the mass number of helium is 4 and the atomic number is 2. So this is how we write helium, 4He2. The number of protons present in the nucleus is called as atomic number. So in general we represent an element by X, A, Z. Okay, so here X is the name of that element, Z is the proton number or the number of protons present in that particular element is represented by the letter Z written here, and A is the atomic mass number. Atomic mass number is nothing but the sum of total number of protons and the total number of neutrons present in that number, that is total number of protons plus total number of neutrons. This gives you the atomic mass number. So now if I know the atomic mass number and if I know the proton number, then A minus Z gives you the neutron number or the total number of neutrons present in that element. Got it? So next we are going to study about the three important terms: isotopes, isobars and isotones. The first term is isotopes. As I told earlier, atoms having same number of protons but different number of neutrons are called as isotopes, and I have given one best example of isotope, that is chlorine. Chlorine has two isotopes, namely Cl35 and Cl37. So see here, the proton number is same, only the number that varies is the atomic mass number or the neutron number. So another example I can give is about neon. Neon has two isotopes, that is 18 and 20 Ne. Okay, next isobars. What are these isobars? Isobars are the atoms having same mass numbers. So now same mass number I can give the example of 3H1 and 3He2. So here this is an isotope of hydrogen, that is tritium, and this is an isotope of helium, 3He2. So these are the atoms having same mass number. They are called as isobars. Next, third one is isotones. What are these isotones? Atoms having same neutron number but different proton number. For example, I can give you the example of 36 sulfur 16 and chlorine 37 chlorine 17. Okay, so now here it has same number of neutrons, right? 36 minus 16 gives you 20 neutrons. Also here 37 minus 17 gives you 20 neutrons. So I get the neutron numbers to be same. So atoms having same neutron numbers but different proton number. Proton number is different, whereas the neutron number is same here. Such atoms are called as isotones. So remember the definitions properly with examples. Yes, next topic is regarding the radius of the nuclei. So most nuclei are approximately spherical, and the formula we use to calculate the radii of the nuclei is R is equals to R0 into A power 1 by 3, where R0 is the radius of the nucleus, which is constant, and its value is 1.2 femtometer, that is 10 power minus 15 meter. So when we know the radius of nuclei, as we know the nuclei are almost spherical in shape, we can calculate the density of the nucleus. So the density of nucleus is found to be the mass of proton divided by the volume. So this we know as 1.67 into 10 power minus 27 kg divided by the volume of the sphere is 4 by 3 pi R0 cube. So substituting the respective value for R0, I get this as 1.67 into 10 power minus 27 divided by 4 by 3 into pi into 1.2 into 10 power minus 15 cube. So this one, the final answer, I get it to be around 2.31 into 10 power 17 kg per meter cube. Therefore, the density rho of this nucleus is found to be around 2.31 into 10 power 17 kg per meter cube, which are the constants you must remember. So next one is regarding mass energy relation. So we know mass energy relation was given by Einstein, and according to him A equals to mc square, where the energy equivalent of mass m is related by the above equation, and c is the velocity of light in vacuum, and the value of c is 3 into 10 power 8 meter per second, which is an important equation to be remembered by solving any problems. So next, mass defect. So what is this mass defect? Mass defect is the difference between the predicted mass and the actual mass of an atomic nucleus. The binding energy of the system can appear as extra mass, which accounts for this difference. Now for example, if I take, so there was one important question in the previous year, that is, they will be giving you the mass defect of 4He2, that is helium, is 0.034. The binding energy per nucleon of helium in mega electron volt is. So now you have to find the best answer among this. So for this, first the given nucleus is what? 4He2. So there are two ways for you to find the mass defect. One is you have direct formula to find the mass defect, that is delta M equals to ZMP plus A minus Z into Mn minus the mass of the atom. So first let us find this part, that is, now here 4He2. This gives you proton number, this gives you mass number, and the difference between the mass number and the proton number gives you the neutron number. So therefore we can say there are 2 protons and 4 minus 2 is 2, therefore there are 2 neutrons here. So as I know the mass of the proton and the mass of the neutron, I can say the predicted mass of this helium. The predicted mass is 2 into 1.00727 is the mass of the proton in AMU plus 2 into 1.0086 is the mass of the neutron in atomic mass unit. So I will get the sum around 4.03186 AMU, right? So this is your predicted mass, but actual mass of this helium was found to be around 4.00150 AMU. This was the actual mass found. So now what happens to the mass defect? Therefore, mass defect equals to, it is the difference between the predicted mass and the actual mass, that is 4.03186 minus 4.00150. That gives you around 0.03036 AMU. So this is the mass defect. You will get the same answer if you substitute it here also in the formula directly. So now this is my mass defect. So where does this mass go? This mass was converted into energy when the nucleus was formed. Now according to Einstein's mass energy relation, we have seen E is equals to mc square, right? So now here this mass has to be expressed in kg. M is expressed in kg there. So now I can write this mass defect delta M equals to, I have to convert the mass present here, mass defect mass, in it is there in AMU, I have to convert it in kg. So when I convert it in kg, it becomes 0.03036 036. To convert AMU into kg, we have to multiply 1.6605 into 10 power minus 27 kg. In the beginning I told you 1 AMU is 1.6605 into 10 power minus 27 kg. So this answer you will get it around 0.0504 into 10 power minus 27 kg. So delta M you got to know now, right? Now substituting it in the equation E is equals to mc square, I will get this as 0.0504 into 10 power minus 27 into 3 into 10 power 8 whole square. So when you say it here, you will get the answer around 4.536 into 10 power minus 12 joules. This is the binding energy. So this much amount of energy is released when the helium nucleus is formed. This energy is called as binding energy. Okay. So now here in the question, what they have asked you, the mass defect is given already. So the binding energy per nucleon of the helium is how much you have to calculate. So to calculate the binding energy in mega electron volt, you have to convert joules into electron volt by the equation. We know 1 electron volt is 1.6 into 10 power minus 19 joules. Very important relation to be remembered. And hence when you convert this much amount of energy in joules into electron volt, you have to divide this equation by 1.6 into 10 power minus 19, for which you get the energy E to be around 7 into 10 power 6 mega electron volt. So the nearest answer is 6.9825. So this becomes the answer for the 6.9825. So now what exactly is this binding energy? Suppose I have this 2 protons and there are 2 neutrons which are neutral charge. So I want to put them all together. So when all these come together, some amount of energy is released and that energy is called as binding energy. Or if I take the reverse way, if I want to split these nucleus, even then the energy is needed. That energy is called as binding energy. Thus altogether I can say binding energy is the energy that holds a nucleus together, or it is the energy required to split an atom of the nucleus into protons and the neutrons. Got it? The next topic is radioactivity. It is a phenomenon discovered by Henry Becquerel. So it is a nuclear phenomenon in which an unstable nucleus undergoes a decay, and this process is called as a radioactive decay. There are namely 3 types of decay, as you all know. They are alpha decay, beta decay and gamma decay. And you must also note that not all the elements are radioactive. Only those elements with atomic number greater than 82 are radioactive. Okay, the first one is alpha decay. So what is this alpha decay? Here the mass number of the product nucleus is 4 less than that of the parent nucleus. That means, suppose how do I represent a nucleus X, A, Z, right? X, A, Z, let it be the parent nucleus. So when this alpha decay takes place, this Y nucleus, which is called as daughter nucleus or product nucleus, there is a decrease in 4 in atomic number, and there is a decrease by 2 in the there is a decrease of 4 in mass number, and there is a decrease of 2 in the proton number or the atomic number, with a release of 1 helium or alpha particle. Okay, so it is said the mass number of the product nucleus is 4 less than the parent nucleus, while the atomic number decreases by 2. Okay, so now for best example is of uranium 238-92. So when the uranium-238 and 92 undergoes alpha decay, the mass number should decrease by 4. If the mass number decreases by 4, it becomes uranium-234, and the proton number decreases by 2 means it becomes 90, and the element with mass number 234 and atomic number 90 is thorium. So uranium gets converted into thorium by the emission of an alpha particle. Okay. This decay is possible only when the total mass of this decay products, if you take the total mass of this decay products, it should be lesser than that of the parent nucleus. So this difference in mass appears as kinetic energy of the products and is calculated using Einstein's mass energy relation. It is also called as Q value. So the Q value here is calculated as Q is equals to mx minus my minus mhe into c square. Okay, so it is same as Einstein's mass energy relation, but here in place of mass you are taking the total difference in mass of the RHS and the LHS. So mx will be having greater mass when compared to that of the combined mass of this daughter nucleus as well as of this helium nuclei. This is how to calculate the Q value, which is an important equation to be remembered to solve the questions. Next is beta decay. So second one is beta decay. In beta decay, there are two types. In first type of decay, electron is released. In another type of decay, a positron is released. So now, suppose I have an element where X here in place of atomic mass number A, I will write it as Z plus N, which is one and the same, and here it is Z. So here it is represented by the equation Y, Z plus N remains as it is, Z plus N plus electron. So this is called as beta minus decay. What is this beta minus decay? So beta minus decay here, a neutron gets converted into a proton. Okay, a neutron of parent element gets converted into proton. That means the proton number of Z here, one of the neutron here gets converted into proton. That's why I have written Z plus N. Why this mass number remains same? See here, a neutron gets converted into proton means I have to write neutron minus 1, right? Neutron gets converted into what? Proton. Therefore Z it becomes Z plus 1. So Z plus 1 minus 1 gets cancelled. Again it will be the same Z plus N itself. Therefore the mass number remains same in case of beta decay. Only the proton number changes. The best example for this is phosphorus. Phosphorus 32 is its mass number and 15 is its proton number. So when it undergoes beta decay, it gets converted into sulfur 32, and here it will be Z plus 1, 15 plus 1, that is 16, plus an electron will be liberated. What happens in beta plus decay? So in beta plus decay, it is the reverse. Here the proton gets converted into neutron and a positron is released. So now it is beta plus decay. In beta plus decay, suppose I have an element X whose proton number is Z and mass number is Z plus N. So when this undergoes beta decay, I have a new element formed Y. So the mass number remains same, and here a proton gets converted into neutron. That means there is a one less proton, that is Z minus 1 it becomes, plus a positron is liberated. So positron is having same mass as that of the electron, only there is a charge difference. Electrons are negatively charged, positons are plus charge. Okay, so here only difference is the proton numbers in beta decay. Got it? The best example I can give is about sodium. Sodium is having the mass number 22 and atomic number 11. So when beta decay takes place for sodium, sodium gets converted into neon. Why? Because here atomic mass number remains same and 11 minus 1 is 10. The element with atomic number 10 is neon plus a positron will be liberated. Next, third one, it is about gamma decay. Gamma decay do not change the composition of any nucleus. That means it do not change the number of protons and neutrons present in the nucleus. But when this gamma decay takes place, an enormous amount of energy is released, which are very high wavelength electromagnetic radiations. Okay, next. The next topic is law of radioactive decay. So the law states that the number of nuclei undergoing the decay per unit time is proportional to the total number of nuclei in the sample. Suppose there are n number of nuclei in the sample and among them delta n undergoes decay in the time delta t. Then according to the law of radioactive decay, I can write delta n divided by delta t is proportional to n. Okay. So now I have to replace this proportionality constant. Therefore, delta n by delta t equals to minus lambda n, where lambda is called radioactive decay constant or disintegration constant, and minus sign indicates that the substance is decaying with time. Okay, so we had one derivation in your syllabus where after simplifying this by integration we get the final expression as n equals to n naught e power minus lambda t, which is a very important relation to be remembered while solving the problems. Okay, where n naught is the number of radioactive nuclei in the sample at some arbitrary time t naught, and n is the number of radioactive nuclei at any subsequent time t. So now this decay rate of the sample is also called by the term activity. Okay, so the SI unit of activity is becquerel. It is becquerel because it is Henry Becquerel who discovered radioactivity. So 1 becquerel means 1 disintegration per second. So it is also called in terms of Curie. So 1 Curie is equals to 3.7 into 10 power 10 becquerel is the relation between Curie and becquerel. 1 Curie equals 3.7 into 10 power 10 becquerel. Fine. Next. The next topic is half-life. So what is half-life? It is the time taken by the sample that has initially, if there are n naught number of nuclei in that sample, the time taken by the sample to reduce it to n naught by 2 is called as half-life. So there is an expression to calculate half-life denoted by T half, that is T half equals to 0.693 divided by lambda. Okay, where lambda is disintegration constant. Next, it is mean life. So don't get confused between mean life and half-life when it is asked. Mean life is the average life of all the nuclei of the atoms of the given radioactive substance. So now how is mean life calculated? Mean life is denoted by tau. Tau equals to 1 divided by lambda. It is inversely proportional to the decay constant. Or I can say tau is equals to T half divided by 0.693, considering the relation between T half and lambda. If I want to relate the mean life and half-life, then this is the expression. Tau equals to T half divided by 0.693. Okay, so very important relation to be remembered. So the next topic is nuclear fission. Nuclear fission, it is the process in which the nucleus of an atom splits into 2 or more lighter nuclei when it is bombarded by nuclear particles such as proton, neutron, etc. Now for example, let us consider one unstable nuclei, that is uranium-235-92. This is purely unstable. Okay, so when a neutron is bombarded onto that of this uranium-235 nucleus, what happens? It absorbs this neutron and it becomes uranium-236-92. So now this uranium-236 is further highly unstable. Therefore, it undergoes fission to give two stable nuclei. So that two stable nuclei produced barium-144-56 plus krypton 89-36 plus 3 neutrons are released in order to balance the action now. So not necessarily barium and krypton. So this one, uranium-236-92 may also produce the other elements, rubidium-90-37 plus cesium-143 and atomic number 55. Here also 3 neutrons will be released. So if I want to balance this atomic number means, then the remaining neutrons I have to write here, that is 3 neutrons. Next, other fission fragments are xenon. Xenon can also be produced. Xenon 143-54 plus strontium 90-38 plus 3 neutrons are released. So all these fission fragments produced are highly stable. So where is this nuclear fission used? Nuclear fission is a basic principle of nuclear reactors which are used to produce electricity. So next, moving on to nuclear reactors. So nuclear reactors, the basic principle of the nuclear reactor, as I told, it's nuclear fission. So we know that when the fission reaction takes place, the neutrons are released. These extra neutrons released, once the neutrons are released in any fission processes, these neutrons can once again combine with the parent nucleus and can initiate another fission process, right? In this way, more and more neutrons produced can interact with the parent nucleus. But this reaction is called as chain reaction. There are two ways. So that is controlled chain reaction and uncontrolled chain reaction. So controlled chain reaction is that which takes place in the nuclear reactor. So how it can be controlled, that depends now on the parts of the nuclear reactor. Let us study now. So yeah, suppose the chain reaction is not controlled, then it leads to explosive energy output, as in case of nuclear bombs. The basic principle of nuclear bomb is nuclear fission itself, but it is uncontrolled chain reaction. Whereas in nuclear reactor, it is nuclear fission where controlled chain reaction takes place. Okay. Now, when the neutrons are released, as I told you, let me take one example where uranium, earlier I had told, where uranium-235-92, when it is bombarded by a neutron, we get uranium-236-92 plus barium, this one further it undergoes fission to form barium-144-56 plus 89 krypton and 36 plus 3 neutrons are released, as I told, right? So now these product nucleus produced are stable in nature, and also I have these 3 neutrons released. So in this way, the neutrons released during each fission of a uranium-236 may be moving fastly or they may be moving slowly. Okay, the slow neutrons are responsible to cause the fission. So those neutrons which move faster, there are chances of those neutrons getting escaped from the core. Okay, so in order to slow down the speeds of the neutrons, the moderators are used inside this core. Okay, the core consists of the fuel element, the moderator and the control rods. Okay, so the moderators, the function of the moderator is to slow down the fast moving neutrons. Okay, usually the moderators used are water or heavy water whose composition is D2O. D2O means deuterium oxide. So heavy water consists of the major quantity of deuterium, which is one of the isotope of hydrogen, or sometimes even graphite is used as the moderator. Okay, next, this is the function of the moderator. Why control rods are used? Control rods are used in order to slow down the reaction rate. When the reaction continues, suppose the rate of the reaction is very high, then using control rods the reaction rate is controlled. Okay. Next, the core also contains the fuel elements, the parent nucleus, which are to be undergone the fission. Okay. Next, it consists of the coolant. Why coolant is used? So due to the continuous fission process, the heat is generated. In order to remove the heat generated, the coolant is used, and basically the coolant used is water itself. Okay. Now, if the neutron population in a reactor decreases over a given period of time, then the fission rate also decreases and ultimately drops to 0. That state is called as subcritical state. Okay, that state is called as subcritical state. Okay. Okay. There are 3 states: subcritical state, critical state, and supercritical state. Okay. There are 3 states in the nuclear reactor. Next, this 3 states depends upon a term called as multiplication factor. The multiplication factor is nothing but it gives the information of the growth rate of the neutrons. Okay. Now, it is denoted by the letter K. Okay. For subcritical state, the value of K should be lesser than 1. Now suppose if the multiplication factor K equals to 1, then the operation of the reactor is said to be in the critical state. So this critical state is the most necessary state for the steady power generation in case of nuclear reactor. Okay. Now suppose this K is greater than 1, then the reaction is termed as supercritical. Okay. That means the reaction rate is very high and there are chances where the nuclear reactor gets exploded. So we should not allow the nuclear reactor to reach this stage where K becomes greater than 1. The functioning of the nuclear reactor takes place when the multiplication factor K equals to 1. So as I told you, now the heat generated due to the continuous reaction is reduced by using coolant. Okay. So usually water is used as a coolant, and other than that there is a large shielding surrounding this entire system in order to prevent the radiation generated inside this from coming out of the reactor. Okay. So once the coolant is circulated around this system, the coolant transfers the heat generated to a working fluid which produces the steam here. Okay. The steam produced, it goes towards the steam produced, it here on the other side there will be a turbine. Okay, the heat produced, the steam produced will spin the turbine in order to produce the carbon free electricity. This is about the nuclear reactor, and the only thing you have to remember here is the function of the different parts. What does core have? What is the function of control rods? What is the function of reflector? The reflector will reflect back the neutrons that have escaped from the core. Okay, it will reflect back the neutrons. What is the function of coolant? These are all the important things to be remembered which are asked in multiple choice questions. Okay, this is about the nuclear reactor. Next topic is nuclear fusion. Nuclear fusion is the process in which two lighter nuclei fuse to form a heavier nucleus, releasing large amount of energy. And we observe this nuclear fusion in case of sun and in case of stars. Okay, so now best example is we are going to speak about what happens in stars. Okay, So now, as I told you, for fusion to take place, the two lighter nuclei must come close to each other. Suppose these lighter nuclei are hydrogen atoms, the two lighter nuclei, let me consider. So they fuse together to form 2H1 deuterium plus a proton, a positron is released, and a neutrino with a release of 0.42 mega electron volt of energy. Now further, this lighter nuclei combines with another nuclei of deuterium and it gives an isotope of helium, that is 3He2 plus a neutron, and 3.27 mega electron volt of energy is released here. Further, we get the tritium and helium. In this way, the heavier element is formed. Now, before that, let us see here what happens is, for fusion, I told you, for fusion to take place, two lighter nuclei must combine, right? Now, when the two lighter nuclei wants to combine, suppose I have two nuclei here, okay, two nuclei here, okay. So these, if I consider hydrogen, two hydrogen atoms, first two hydrogen atoms, then they both are positively charged, okay. So if they want to come together, they want to fuse together, then they experience a Coulomb repulsion because they both are like charges, okay. Now, in order to overcome this Coulomb repulsion, they must have an enough amount of energy. So the height of this Coulomb barrier, it depends on the charges present as well as the radius of these charges. Okay, so in order to overcome this barrier, what we have to do? We have to supply a large amount of temperature to the system. So when the fusion is achieved by raising the temperature of the systems, so that the particles get enough energy to cross the fusion. Okay, we define this term as thermonuclear fusion. Okay, when the temperature increases, the nuclei present, they get enough energy to cross the Coulomb barrier and therefore they fuse each other. That phenomenon is called as thermonuclear fusion. Okay, so this is what we find in case of interior of stars and in case of sun. So we know that in sun the temperature is 1.5 into 10 power 7 Kelvin around, right? So this temperature is very less for the fusion to take place. So slowly the conversion of the lighter nuclei to heavier nuclei takes place from the core of the sun. Okay, the core of the sun consists of what? The lighter nuclei. Which one it is? Hydrogen. So hydrogen combines with the another nuclei of hydrogen and you get here 2H1 plus a positron plus a neutrino plus 0.42 mega electron volt of energy. Also here we get the two products, one is positron and one is the deuterium. So this positron, it combines with electron and gamma photons are released and 1.02 mega electron volt of energy is also released. So another nuclei present here is deuterium. Deuterium, it gets combined with the another hydrogen atom and you get an isotope of helium, that is 3He2 plus a gamma photon is released plus 5.49 mega electron volt of energy is released. Again further here, this isotope of helium, when it combines with another isotope of helium, we get helium, that is 4He2 plus 1H1 or 1H1, two atoms of hydrogen plus 12.86 mega electron volt of energy. So now in order for this reaction to take place, these first three reactions must occur 2 times. Then finally we get the last reaction to be 1H1 plus 2 electrons giving rise to 4He2 plus 6 gamma photons plus 26.7 mega electron volt of energy. This is the final equation that takes place in case of the fusion in sun. So we cannot say helium is the final element that is produced in case of sun. Okay. Okay, after the complete burning of hydrogen, now the sun will be consisting of only helium. So helium, at one point the hydrogen in the core gets depleted and becomes helium. The core starts to cool down now. The star begins to collapse under its own gravity, and this increases the temperature of the core. So when the temperature of the core increases, again the two lighter nuclei helium starts fusing and it gets converted into another higher element, that is carbon. In this way, when all the helium nuclei gets depleted, the entire core gets converted into the carbon. So this is a very fast story. Presently the sun is of the age of around 5 into 10 power 9 years, which means there are enough hydrogen in the core to keep it going for around 5 billion years it seems. There is so much hydrogen in the core in order to complete the first cycle of conversion of hydrogen into the helium. So this is about the fusion. Now last topic is regarding the uses of radioisotopes. So we have the important isotopes: phosphorus 32, which is used for the treatment of skin cancer; iodine 131, used for the treatment of thyroid gland; sodium 24, used for blood circulation disorder; cobalt 60, used for the treatment of cancer; and carbon 14, used to find the age of the fossils. Iron 59 is used to treat anemia. This may be asked for the multiple choice questions. Very important isotopes. So let us solve some problems based on the formulas we studied now. First question: calculate the energy equivalent of 1 gram of substance. And the options given are 9 into 10 power 6 joules, 9 into 10 power 13 joules, 9 into 10 power 12 joules, and 8 into 10 power 12 joules. So they have given you amount of substance as 1 gram. So 1 gram is nothing but 10 power minus 3 kg. So in order to calculate the energy equivalent, we have to use Einstein's mass energy relation, that is E is equals to mc square. We know M we have to express in terms of kg, that is why I converted gram into kg, into 3 into 10 power 8 whole square. So 3 square is 9, this is 9 into 10 power minus 3 into 10 power 16, and the final answer is 9 into 10 power 13 joules. So the answer is B, that is 9 into 10 power 13 joules. So what does this mean? When 1 gram of matter is converted to energy, there is a release of enormous amount of energy, which is around 9 into 10 power 13 joules. Okay. So next question. Moving on to next question. The half-life of tritium is 12.5 years. What mass of tritium of initial mass 64 milligrams will remain undecayed after 50 years? So here there are two ways. One, you can find it orally, that is now here it is given T half is 12.5 years, right? Now, and they have also given the initial mass. Initial mass is given to be around 64 milligrams. So as I told you, T half is the time period required to reduce to half of the sample, right? So now that means initially there will be 64 milligrams. Half of 64 milligrams is 32 milligrams. So in order to reduce to half of the initial time, amount, the time taken is 12.5 years. Okay. So now again 32 milligrams to become half, that is 16 milligrams, the time taken will be added. So it is 12.5 plus 12.5 years, that is 25 years. This again to reduce to half, that is to become 8 milligrams, again 25 plus 12.5 years, that is 37.5 years will be taken. Again 8 milligrams to reduce to half, that is to become 4 milligrams, 37.5 plus 12.5 years, that becomes 50 years. So the question asked is, how much amount of the substance will remain undecayed after 50 years. So after 50 years only 4 milligrams will be remaining. So this is the answer. Otherwise there is one formula where you can use n by n naught equals to half T divided by T. Okay. So now where n is where you have to find the amount of undecayed sample, n naught is the amount of original sample, T is nothing but T half, and this small t is nothing but the time asked in the question. Okay, see here now you can calculate this as n equals to, so n naught if I take here, it is n naught is the initial mass, that is 64 milligrams into half into T by T half. So I have been asked to find after 50 years divided by T half given is 12.5 years. So 50 divided by 12.5 is 50 divided by 12.5 is 4. So 1 divided by 16 it will be. So 16 ones are, 16 fours are. Again the answer will be 4 milligrams. Got it? The next question. An element X decays into element Z by two-step process. They have given you the two-step. X decays to Y, releasing an alpha particle. Y further decays into Z, releasing 2 electrons. You have to choose which of the following option is correct. Now this procedure can be related as follows. Now I have an element X. A is the mass number, Z is the atomic number of that element. Now they have given here an alpha particle is released. Okay, for an alpha particle to be released, the daughter nucleus will have as a mass number 4 lesser than the parent nucleus and the atomic number 2 lesser than the parent nucleus, right? So now this product form here Y, A minus 4, Z minus 2. The second reaction given is here 2 electrons are liberated, right? So 2 electrons are to be liberated in the sense I get the product nucleus to be A minus 4 Z. Okay, so that is 2 protons gets converted into neutrons and hence 2 electrons are liberated here. A type of beta decay takes place. 2 electrons are liberated in the sense Z minus 2 becomes Z, and the options given are X and Z are isobars, X and Y are isotopes, X and Y are isotones, X and Z are isotopes. So if I consider the fourth option, X and Z are isotopes. So isotopes are those elements which have same mass number but different, which have same proton number but different mass number. So now here if I consider X and Z, they have same proton number but different mass number. So X and Z are isotopes is the right answer. Because the first option given here is X and Z are isobars. So isobars are the atoms having same mass number. If I consider X and Z, here the mass number A, here the mass number is A minus 4. They don't have same mass number and therefore this option can be excluded. Next, X and Y are isotopes. As I told you, isotopes are the atoms having same proton number but different number of neutrons or different mass number. So if I consider X and Y are isotopes, X and Y, proton number itself is not same here. Here it is Z, here it is Z minus 2. Therefore, even option B is excluded. Next, X and Z are isotones. So, atoms having same neutron number but different proton number are called as isotones. X and Z, they have same neutron number, right? A minus Z is one answer, A minus 4 minus Z is another answer. Therefore, they don't have same neutron number and they can't be isotones. So, the only option left is X and Z are isotopes where they have same number of protons and different number of mass number or different number of neutrons. Next question. When boron is bombarded by neutron, alpha particles are emitted. The mass number of the resulting nucleus is 15, 11, 7, 6. So let us write the reaction here. Boron plus neutron. Boron is bombarded by the neutron. So the given answer, they have told it alpha particles are emitted. 4He2. Let us keep that element X. So we have to find the mass number, this number of this resulting nucleus. So find the mass number. Let us consider all the mass numbers on the LHS. It is 10 plus 1, whereas on the RHS it is, we have to find this mass number plus we have the mass number of helium, that is 4. Now I have to find N. So I get 11 minus 4 equals to N, or N equals to 7. So N equals to 7 is the resulting mass number of the daughter nucleus. So some of the questions will be given in the Google form. Please attend. Thank you.